Welcome to the Whiz Books Podcast, your ultimate stop for exploring life-changing books and mastering English. Whether you're here to reshape your habits, gain new insights, or improve your language skills, we've got you covered. Dive in, learn, and get inspired. Today, we're going to be diving deep into Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt.
Okay.
And this book, it's been praised by, some pretty big names like Sally Hogshead and Jeff Walker. And it's all about, setting and achieving goals. And we're going to try to, really pull out the most valuable insights from this book to help you actually, apply them to your life. So are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So one of the first things that really struck me when I was reading Your Best Year Ever was how much Hyatt emphasizes, the power of belief, that idea that our beliefs actually shape our reality.
Yeah, that's a really powerful concept. He illustrates this with a story about a dog named Nelson and an invisible fence. And Nelson, he learns to stay within the boundary, even after the electronic collar is removed. It's almost like that fence becomes ingrained in his mind. But I'm curious, how does that relate to us? Is he suggesting that we're all just running around with these invisible fences in our heads?
Right, right. Are we all just limited by these invisible barriers?
I mean, I think the point is that our beliefs, even the ones we're not really aware of, they really do influence our actions. And Hyatt dives into something called limiting beliefs, those negative assumptions we kind of carry around about ourselves, the world, other people.
Like, I'm not good at math, or I'm not creative, or I'll never get that promotion.
Exactly. Those are the real invisible fences, right? And they can be incredibly powerful. I mean, they can prevent us from even attempting things that we might otherwise be totally capable of.
So how do we break down these mental barriers?
Yeah.
You mentioned this idea of liberating truths. Are those just the opposite of limiting beliefs?
I think they're more than just opposites, though. It's about replacing those negative assumptions with empowering ones,
Yep.
ones that are actually grounded in reality. I mean, think about Edmund Hillary climbing Mount Everest, or Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile. Those were things that people literally thought were impossible, right? Until someone dared to believe otherwise. So it's not just positive thinking. It's about finding evidence for what's actually possible and using that to kind of rewrite our internal script.
So it's about changing the story we tell ourselves.
The narrative, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And is this where growth mindset comes in? I feel like there's been a lot of talk about growth mindset lately.
Absolutely. Hyatt draws a lot on Carol Dweck's research, and he emphasizes the importance of believing in our ability to change and develop. A growth mindset means seeing, challenges as opportunities to learn and grow, not as proof of our limitations. And that ties in directly with, overcoming those limiting beliefs. So instead of saying I'm not good at math, a growth mindset would say something like, I can get better at math with practice, or I'm not a natural athlete, but I can improve my fitness with consistent effort.
Right, right. So it's about focusing on the potential for growth rather than getting stuck in those fixed labels.
Exactly.
And this is reminding me of some statistics that Hyatt actually cites in the book. He talks about The Economist and the Harris poll showing that, the older we get, the less likely we are to achieve our goals. Is he saying that we just become more pessimistic with age? Or what's going on there?
It's not necessarily about pessimism, but maybe about the accumulation of setbacks over time that can reinforce those limiting beliefs. If we've tried and failed in the past, it can be harder to believe in ourselves in the future.
So it's almost like we have to, unlearn those past experiences and kind of reset our expectations.
Yeah, and that's where the idea of completing the past comes in, which is something we'll discuss a little bit later. But for now, let's stick with how to challenge those negative assumptions, right? He talks about identifying, interrogating, and upgrading our beliefs. Can you give us an example? What might that look like for our listener?
Okay, so let's say someone has a limiting belief I'm not creative. To identify it, they need to become aware of that thought pattern, and then they can interrogate it. Is there actual evidence to support that belief? Were they told they weren't creative as a child? Or are they simply comparing themselves to others?
Right, and that's a crucial point. I mean, oftentimes these beliefs stem from comparisons, especially, in today's world of social media. I mean,
Yeah.
Donna Freitas has done a lot of research on Facebook envy, for instance, and it highlights how these platforms can really like fuel those feelings of inadequacy. We see these curated highlight reels of others' lives, and we start to believe that, we're falling short.
Right. It's like everyone else is living these perfect Instagrammable lives, and we're just, struggling to keep up.
Exactly.
So after interrogating that belief,
Yeah.
how do we like upgrade it? Does that mean just, telling ourselves the opposite?
It's a little more nuanced than that. It's about finding a liberating truth that's both empowering and like grounded in reality. So instead of just saying like I am creative, our listener might try something like I can explore my creativity through different activities and see what resonates with me. It's more about opening up possibilities rather than, forcing a belief that might not feel authentic yet.
Right, right. It's about experimenting and finding what works for us.
Exactly.
And he also mentions this idea of the negativity bias,
Right.
right? That we tend to like, focus on the negative more than the positive.
Yeah.
Does this mean we should just like, ignore all the bad stuff happening in the world?
Not at all. It's more about being mindful of the information we consume and recognizing that the world is like, more nuanced than what we often see in headlines.
Yeah.
Hyatt encourages us to, look for positive trends and kind of counterbalance that negativity. I mean, remember the story of Nick Swinmurn founding Zappos?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Everyone thought selling shoes online was like completely crazy, right?
Yeah.
But he saw this opportunity where others saw only obstacles. And sometimes, challenging that prevailing negativity can lead to like breakthrough innovations.
So it's about like looking for those glimmers of hope and possibility, even amidst the challenges. That's a great point. So we've talked about like identifying, interrogating, and upgrading those limiting beliefs. But is there anything else we can do to kind of strengthen those liberating truths? Like it can feel a bit like we're fighting an uphill battle sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that can be really helpful is actively seeking out evidence to support those liberating truths. It's like building a case for your own potential.
Mm.
For example, if someone's trying to believe that they are capable of learning a new language, they might look for stories of other people who have done the same, even those who started later in life or had similar challenges.
So it's almost like we're becoming our own like personal cheerleaders,
Yeah.
Gathering evidence and support for the best version of ourselves.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to think about it. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about, the power of belief, challenging those limiting beliefs, and kind of starting to cultivate those liberating truths. But I think there's still a lot more to unpack. So in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore the idea of completing the past and how that can help us move forward with more clarity and purpose.
Yeah, that's going to be a really important step.
So stay tuned for that.
Now that we've talked about, the power of belief and challenging those limiting beliefs, let's move on to the next stage of the journey, which Hyatt calls completing the past.
Okay. I'll admit that phrase, it sounded a bit abstract to me at first. What exactly does he mean by completing the past?
Well, it's really about acknowledging and processing our past experiences, both the triumphs and the setbacks, so we can move forward without carrying all that unnecessary baggage. It's not about dwelling on the past, but rather using it as a source of learning and growth.
So it's like taking inventory of like the past year and seeing what we can, learn from it, both good and bad.
Exactly. And he actually outlines a four-stage process for doing this.
Okay, yeah, he mentions that. Can you walk us through those stages?
Sure. So the first step is to state what we wanted to happen in the past year. This could be based on goals we set, hopes we had, or even just, general aspirations. It's about revisiting those intentions and acknowledging what we were striving for.
Okay, so kind of like setting a baseline, right? Remembering what we were aiming for.
Exactly. And then we look at what actually happened, which, requires some honesty, doesn't it? Sometimes it's easier to just avoid those things we'd rather forget.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be tempting to just like sweep those disappointments under the rug.
But it's really about facing reality, even the parts that might make us, uncomfortable. Maybe we fell short of our expectations, or encountered unexpected roadblocks, or even, achieved things we never gave ourselves credit for. This stage is about acknowledging that full picture.
Yeah, I could see how that would be important. Kind of like getting a clear picture of the landscape before we start planning our route.
Exactly. And once we've done that, the next step is to to actually extract those valuable lessons.
Right. That's where the real learning comes in.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? How do we make sure we're not just like reliving the past, but actually learning from it?
Well, Hyatt emphasizes that every experience, even those we might label as failures, offers valuable lessons. It's
Mm.
about asking ourselves questions like, what went well? What could I have done differently? What did I learn about myself in the process?
So it's not just about identifying what happened, but also understanding why it happened and what we can take away from it.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. But then how do we actually apply those lessons to the future? Does he give any specific examples of how people have done that?
He does. Remember Jen, who regretted losing touch with her family after listening to her partner's negativity?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It took time and courage, but she decided to reach out to her mother and rebuild those connections. And that experience taught her the importance of, prioritizing her own values and not letting others dictate her relationships.
Right. That's a great example. It shows how even those painful experiences can lead to powerful personal growth. But what about regret? He talks about using regret constructively too. Isn't regret usually seen as a negative emotion?
It can be painful, but it can also be a powerful motivator for change. Hyatt distinguishes between harmful self-condemnation and the kind of regret that helped us identify areas where we can, make different choices in the future.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging what we wish we had done differently, but without letting it paralyze us.
So it's about using regret as a springboard for growth rather than letting it weigh us down. I like that. Okay, so we've talked about completing the past and extracting those valuable lessons. What comes next in this journey of creating our best year ever?
The next step is all about cultivating gratitude. And, what's fascinating is that gratitude isn't just about feeling good. It's about actively fueling our progress towards our goals.
Wait, gratitude can actually help us achieve our goals.
Yeah.
How does that work? I've always thought of gratitude as something, nice to have, but not necessarily essential for success.
It might seem counterintuitive, but research actually shows that gratitude can significantly impact our well-being and our ability to achieve our goals. Hyatt references studies by Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough showing that gratitude can actually enhance our resilience, our ability to cope with stress, and even our motivation to pursue our
Hmm.
goals.
So it's not just about, counting our blessings. It's about using gratitude as a tool for personal growth and achievement. He shares some pretty incredible stories about the power of gratitude.
Mm.
I'm thinking of John Kralik, who transformed his life by writing 365 thank you notes.
Yeah.
What I found so inspiring about his story was that, he started this practice during a really difficult time in his life.
Right.
He was facing, divorce, financial struggles, strained relationships. It wasn't about denying those challenges, but rather about choosing to focus on what he was thankful for, even amidst those difficulties.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective had this ripple effect, leading to all these positive changes in his personal and professional life. What's powerful about John's story and what Hyatt emphasizes is that it wasn't about grand gestures or waiting for things to be perfect. It was about making gratitude this consistent practice, even when things felt really tough.
So how can our listeners cultivate that kind of daily gratitude? Does he give any specific suggestions? I know he mentions a gratitude journal. Is that something you personally practice?
I do. I find that taking just a few minutes each day to write down things I'm grateful for helps me, shift my focus to the positive, especially on those days when things just feel really overwhelming. But it doesn't have to be limited to writing. We can practice gratitude through daily affirmations, by expressing appreciation to others, or even just taking a moment to notice the beauty around us. It's really about training our minds to focus on abundance rather than scarcity.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about shifting our perspective. He also mentions this interesting technique called the George Bailey technique, inspired by the movie It's a Wonderful Life. I've seen that movie, but how does it relate to gratitude?
Well, it's about taking a moment to imagine what our lives would be like without the things we often take for granted, like our loved ones, our health, our homes. It's a way of shaking us out of our complacency and appreciating what we already have. Sometimes we need that perspective shift to recognize the abundance that's already present in our lives.
Right, right. It's like reminding ourselves of what we have to be grateful for. Okay, so we've talked about believing in the possibility, completing the past, and cultivating gratitude. Those are some pretty powerful steps. What comes next in this journey of designing our best year ever?
Well, now that we've laid the groundwork, it's time to start building. And that's where goal setting comes in. But Hyatt doesn't just advocate for any goals. He introduces this concept of smarter goals.
Okay, I've heard of SMART goals, but
Oh.
what makes them smarter?
Well, smarter goals are specific, measurable, actionable, risky, time-bound, exciting, and relevant. It's a framework that helps us create goals that are not only achievable, but also truly meaningful and aligned with our values.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. What does he mean by risky? Isn't the whole point of goal setting to like increase our chances of success? Why would we want to make them risky?
He's not suggesting we set reckless or impossible goals. It's more about pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones. Hyatt emphasizes that if we're not at least a little bit uncomfortable with our goals, they're probably not ambitious enough. True growth happens when we challenge ourselves to, step outside of what feels familiar and safe. He suggests categorizing our goals into like three zones: the comfort zone, the discomfort zone, and the delusional zone. And the sweet spot is that discomfort zone. That's where we find the balance between, challenge and achievability.
So it's about setting goals that stretch us
Yeah.
without, setting ourselves up for failure. I like that analogy of the comfort, discomfort, and delusional zones. He also stresses the importance of writing down our goals. I've always been more of a, mental to-do list kind of person.
Yeah.
Why does he say writing them down is so important?
Well, there's something really powerful about, taking those goals out of our heads and making them tangible. That act of writing them down it's like a declaration of intent, a commitment to ourselves. And it also helps us clarify our thinking, reinforce our commitment, and track our progress.
Yeah, I can see how, having those goals written down could help us stay focused and motivated, especially when we hit those inevitable bumps in the road. But I know what some of our listeners might be thinking, like goal setting. I've tried that before and it never seems to work. Why does Hyatt think this framework is different?
It's not just about setting goals. It's about creating a system that supports our success. And that leads us to the next crucial element, which is understanding our why. Why are we setting these goals in the first place? What are the deeper motivations that will, fuel our commitment and keep us going when things get tough?
Okay, that makes sense. It's not enough to just want something. We need to understand why we want it. He talks about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, right? Can you explain that a bit further for our listeners?
Sure. So intrinsic motivation comes from within. It's about pursuing goals that are personally meaningful and satisfying, regardless of external rewards. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is driven by, external factors like recognition, money, or, pressure from others.
So intrinsic motivation is about doing things because they align with our values and like bring us joy, while extrinsic motivation is about doing things for, external validation or rewards.
Mhm.
Is one like inherently better than the other?
Well, Hyatt argues that intrinsic motivation is far more powerful and sustainable in the long run. When we're driven by that deep sense of purpose, we're more likely to persevere through challenges and experience a greater sense of fulfillment when we achieve our goals. He shares this really powerful story about Charlie Jabley, who achieved incredible success in the music industry but struggled with his weight for years. And it wasn't until he was diagnosed with a brain tumor that he found this truly compelling why for getting healthy survival. And that profound realization fueled his transformation, leading him to, lose over 120 pounds and completely overhaul his lifestyle.
Wow, that's an incredible story. It shows how, connecting with that deeper purpose can unlock a level of motivation and commitment
Yeah.
that external rewards just, simply can't match. But what about those of us who haven't had such a, like life-altering experience? How can we strengthen our intrinsic motivation on a daily basis?
Well, Hyatt suggests several techniques for strengthening our motivation. One is to, internalize the reward. It's about focusing on the inherent satisfaction we'll gain from achieving the goal, rather than just the external outcome. Another is to be realistic about the commitment. It's about acknowledging the effort involved and being prepared for those challenges, rather than setting ourselves up for disappointment. He also suggests gamifying the process, finding ways to make it fun and engaging.
Gamifying the process. I like that. It's about finding ways to like inject a bit of playfulness into our goals, which can make them, feel less like chores and more like adventures.
Exactly.
He also mentions the importance of measuring our gains. Why is that so crucial for, maintaining motivation?
Well, when we track our progress, we can see how far we've come, which can, boost our confidence and reinforce our commitment. It's about celebrating those small wins along the way, recognizing that every step forward, no matter how small, is a step closer to our ultimate goal.
So it's about acknowledging those milestones and giving ourselves credit for the effort we're putting in.
That makes sense. So we've talked about, setting smarter goals, connecting with our why. Is there anything else we need to consider before taking action? I'm sensing a theme here about not going it alone. Am I right?
You are absolutely right. Hyatt really emphasizes that we don't have to do this all alone. In fact, having a supportive network can be like crucial for success.
Yeah, it really challenges that whole self-made myth, doesn't it? We hear so many stories about individuals achieving these great things completely on their own. But he's saying that, relationships actually play this vital role in helping us learn, grow, and stay motivated.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're like stronger together.
Yeah.
He even uses the example of J.R.R. Tolkien.
The author of Lord of the Rings, he struggled for years to complete that, like, epic fantasy novel. And it was actually his close friend, C.S. Lewis, who provided that, like, unwavering encouragement and support. You know, he really pushed Tolkien to finish what became a literary masterpiece.
Well, that's a fantastic example. It really shows how, the right kind of support can help us push through those moments of doubt and keep us moving forward when we feel like giving up.
It's making me think about my own support system and who I can, turn to for encouragement and accountability.
That's a great step to take. The book actually outlines 4 key benefits of these intentional relationships: learning, encouragement, accountability, and even competition.
Wait, competition? I thought we were talking about support. Isn't competition more about, competing against each other?
It's not about like tearing each other down, but rather about, motivating each other to reach our full potential. It's like that friendly rivalry that pushes us to like step up our game. Okay, I can see how that could be beneficial. It's like you know, having a workout buddy who challenges you to push harder.
Yeah.
But how do we find these supportive relationships? Are there like specific places we should be looking?
The book actually offers a variety of examples from online communities and running groups to masterminds and coaching circles. It's really about finding the right kind of community that aligns with our goals and values.
So it's not just about, having people around us, but about being intentional about the kinds of relationships we cultivate, surrounding ourselves with people who inspire us, challenge us, and support us on our journey.
Precisely. So now we've set our goals, we've connected with our why, and we've found our tribe. So what's next?
Time to take action. I'm ready to hear about Hyatt's LAP principle. I remember him mentioning that earlier.
Okay, yeah. The LAP principle stands for leverage, execute, adjust, and persevere. It's really a framework for like turning our plans into reality, moving from intention to action.
Okay, so let's break that down. What does it mean to leverage? Does that mean we should be like, delegating all our tasks?
Not necessarily. It's more about recognizing that we don't have to do everything ourselves. It's about, utilizing our resources, seeking out mentors, and tapping into the expertise of others.
So it's about being strategic and recognizing that we can achieve more when we, collaborate and leverage the strengths of others.
Exactly. And then comes execute. This is where we actually take that first step, that small action that, sets our plan in motion.
It can be so daunting to take that first step, especially when we don't have everything perfectly figured out. Does he have any advice for overcoming that initial inertia?
Hyatt emphasizes that we don't have to have everything perfect to get started. It's about taking that initial leap of faith and trusting that we can, like, course correct along the way.
So it's about embracing imperfection and focusing on progress over perfection.
Exactly. And that leads us to adjust. It's about being flexible and adaptable, recognizing that we might need to, like, change our approach as we go. We might encounter unexpected obstacles. We might need to refine our strategies, or we might even discover that our initial plan needs a little tweaking.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about being willing to adapt and not getting so attached to our initial plan that
Mhm.
we miss those opportunities for improvement.
Right. And finally, we come to persevere. This is where our why really comes into play. It's about staying committed to our goals, even when we hit those inevitable challenges and setbacks.
This is where things get real, isn't it? It's easy to get all excited at the beginning, but maintaining that motivation over time, that can be a real challenge.
It is, and that's why, connecting with our why is so crucial. It's about remembering why we started in the first place and using that motivation to push through those tough times.
He also mentions the importance of um, reviewing our goals regularly and kind of previewing those next steps. Why does he emphasize that?
It's about creating a system of accountability, a way of checking in with ourselves and making sure we're on track. He suggests these different review horizons like daily, weekly, quarterly, and annual to ensure we're making consistent progress.
So it's about creating a rhythm for ourselves, a regular practice of reflection and adjustment.
Exactly. And don't forget about celebrating those milestones too. It's not just about achieving that end goal, it's about acknowledging our progress and rewarding ourselves for our efforts.
Yeah, celebrating those wins can help us stay energized and enthusiastic, which is, I mean, it's essential for maintaining that momentum, especially when we're tackling those long-term goals that require, sustained effort and commitment.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into your best year ever, what key takeaways do you think will resonate most with our listeners?
For me, it's that combination of like inner work and outer action. It's about believing in ourselves, completing the past, cultivating gratitude, and then taking those concrete steps to design our future and bring our vision to life.
And remember, it's not about doing it all alone. It's about leveraging our resources, finding our tribe, and supporting each other along the way.
This book is just packed with practical tips and inspiring stories, and I highly recommend checking it out for a more in-depth guide on creating your best year ever.
Remember, the journey starts with a single step. What small action can you take today to set yourself on that path towards achieving your goals?
That's a great question for our listeners to ponder. Finally, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with others. Your journey to core knowledge and better English starts here, so keep learning, growing, and staying curious. See you next time.